As a controller player, you can use advanced sensitivity options and set up your own custom binds. And I believe these advanced options and custom binds are the reason why controller players are able to compete with the best keyboard and mouse players. But the advanced settings can be confusing, and you may be using suboptimal settings. Or, worse still, you could be using the default settings. I want to help you find the best controller settings so you can play to your full potential. And yes, I'm a keyboard and mouse player, but I played with a controller for a very long time, and I've analysed the settings of more than a dozen of the best Fortnite controller players like Sway, Unknown, Wolfies, Scoped, and many others. And in this video, I'm going to share with you what I've learned so you can optimize your controller settings, sensitivity, and binds. So make sure you watch this whole video. And before we get started, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications so when I release a new video, you get notified. Now, there are a bunch of settings that controller players should be using that you won't find in the controller options tab. So here we're going to be tweaking the game settings that you can find in the second tab of your Fortnite settings, and it has this cog icon. So under the movement settings, you want to use the following settings. For toggle sprint, you don't want sprint on a toggle, so turn it off. Sprint by default sets your default movement to sprint, and all controller players should be using this because you always want to be sprinting when you play Fortnite. For sprint cancels reloading, you want this off because you want to be able to reload while you sprint. Auto open doors is a bit of personal preference, and I recommend turning it on because if you mess up an edit and you make a door, for example, then you'll automatically run through it and not lose any time. Going on to the combat section, and you want to use the following settings. Hold to swap pickup I suggest turning off because it can make you accidentally swap your current weapon with a weapon on the ground. Toggle targeting sets targeting or ADSing to be an on or off toggle. I recommend turning this off so you can do quick ADS shots. Mark danger when targeting lets you place a danger marker when you ADS and place a marker, so I recommend turning this on. Auto pick up weapons is another personal preference, and if you want to automatically pick up all the weapons when you move over them, you can turn it on. Personally, I have this off because I prefer to have control over my inventory and the weapons that I pick up. Auto sort consumables to the right places consumable items such as heals and shields by default in your rightmost empty slot. I recommend turning this setting on because to the right is usually where you want your consumables sorted anyway, and this just does it by default, so it's very helpful. And now for your building settings, I recommend you use the following settings. Reset building choice, so when this is on, switching to build mode will always bring up the first building piece or your wall, but when it's off, the game will remember the last building piece you were using and automatically bring that up. So for consistency, I suggest turning reset building choice on so you always switch to your wall. Turbo building, you definitely want this on. And confirm edit on release allows you to automatically confirm an edit when you release your select building edit, so the right trigger on your controller, and I think that all controller players should be using this. Now that you have your game settings optimized, let's move on to the controller options tab. So controller auto run lets you double click your movement stick to automatically run forward without the need to hold your stick forward. This is useful for when you're gliding in and want to take your hands off the sticks, or if you want to rearrange your inventory while still moving forward, so turn it on. Build immediately, Builder Pro allows you to build immediately when switching to different build pieces, and if you're using Builder Pro, I recommend turning this on. Edit hold time is the duration you have to hold your edit button to enter edit mode. You want this set to the lowest possible number so you can enter edit mode quickly, so set it to 0.100 seconds. For vibration, I think vibration can be jarring and make you play worse, and I suggest turning it off. Now you have all your controller settings configured, and we can move on to your sensitivity. And listen, there's a lot of personal preference when it comes to sensitivity. So instead of giving you exact values to use, I'm going to give you a suggested range. And when you select a number within the suggested range, it's likely to work well for you. Also, you should bear in mind that if you've been using the default settings, then the sensitivity that I'm going to suggest that you use may seem dramatically different. And you may even play worse while you adjust to these new sensitivities. But don't worry, because when you stick with it, you will get better. So in the first sensitivity section, you're only going to be choosing your build mode and edit mode sensitivity multipliers because you'll be turning on the advanced options to fine-tune the rest of your sensitivity settings. So build mode and edit mode sensitivity multiplier is a multiplier applied to your look sensitivity when in build mode. In general, you want to use the highest number that you can comfortably use while still having good control over your building. I recommend setting this to about 1.7 to 2.5, and I suggest that you set build mode and edit mode sensitivity to the same numbers for consistency. As a rough guide, you want your build mode and edit mode sensitivities when multiplied by your look speed to equal between about 1 and 1.2. So for example, if you're using a 50% look speed, then you'd want your build mode and edit mode sensitivity multiplier to be between about 2 and 2.4. Or if you want to work backwards and you're using a 2.5 build and edit mode sensitivity multiplier, you'd want your look speed to be between about 40 and 50%. But we'll be setting the look sensitivity next, so make sure you use advanced options because this is going to let us fine tune your look and ADS sensitivities. So now let's go on to your look sensitivity. So look horizontal speed sets how quickly your view rotates left and right, so you can set this lower for less speed and more control or higher to move faster. I recommend setting this to between about 40 and 60%. 50% will be a good starting point, but I don't recommend going lower than 40% because it'll feel a bit slow, or higher than 60% because you'll struggle to have control. But there are some players that go above 60% and some go as high as 80%. I just don't recommend this, especially if you're just getting started with a new sensitivity. And your look vertical speed sets how quickly your view rotates up and down, and I recommend you set this the same as your horizontal speed so you have consistent movements in the horizontal and vertical axes. And moving on to the horizontal and vertical turning boost, this lets you apply an additional rotation speed when your look stick is fully deflected. Every top controller player sets this as 0% to disable the boost, so I recommend you do the same. Turning boost ramp is the time that it takes to reach the boost speed when your look stick is fully deflected. As you're not using a boost setting, this doesn't really matter, but you should set it to 0 seconds anyway just to be safe. Instant boost when building, you want off. You can enable this setting to ignore the boost ramp when in build mode, but you're not using the boost setting, so it doesn't really matter, but set it off as well to just be safe. Next, let's move on to setting up your aim down sights or ADS sensitivity. So the ADS look horizontal speed, this sets how quickly your view rotates left and right when you ADS, and you want this much lower than your standard look horizontal speed so you have more control when you ADS. As a rough guide, you want your ADS look speed to be around 20 to 30% of your normal look speed. For example, if you use the 50% look speed before, then you'd want your ADS look speed to be around 10% and 15%. In general, setting your ADS look speeds to between around 8% and 16% is going to be fine for most players. And your ADS look vertical speed sets how quickly your view rotates up and down, and I suggest you set this to the same as the ADS look horizontal speed so you have consistent movements once again. And for the ADS turning boost, as before, this applies an additional rotation speed when your look speed is fully deflected, and again, every top controller player sets this at 0% to disable the boost, and I recommend you do the same. So the ADS turning boost ramp time is the time it takes to reach the boost speed when your look stick is fully deflected. You're not using a boost, so this setting doesn't really matter, but set it to 0 seconds to be safe. Now let's move down to the advanced sensitivity options, and here we'll be making the final tweaks to your sensitivity. So for look dampening time, this is the time that it takes to reach the expected look rotation speed after you apply the initial input to your controller's look stick. You want to set this to 0 seconds so you disable the dampening. Look input curve defines how input from your controller's look stick is processed. Linear uses the raw stick input, and exponential causes smaller stick movements to have less of an effect. This is sort of like mouse acceleration for mouse users. But almost all of the best controller players use linear as your raw input is more consistent, so I suggest that you use linear. And now aim assist strength sets how much aim assist to apply, so use the highest value, which is 100%. Now let's move on to your controller dead zone. And the dead zone is the area surrounding your stick the Fortnite ignores input from. Setting your dead zone values too low may result in your character continuing to move or your camera continuing to move even after you remove your fingers from the sticks. So here are some recommended ranges I suggest you use for your controller dead zones. You want them between about 6% and 12%. I suggest you set them to the same values, but there are some controller pros that set the look stick dead zone less than the move stick dead zone. You may need to experiment with your dead zone values to find the perfect values based on your controller and the sticks that you have. And finally, for the foot controller, unless you're using a foot controller, you just want to turn this off. So now you've got your controller settings and sensitivity sorted, and now we can talk about your controller binds. So your controller binds are your button configurations, and they're the same thing as what keybinds are for keyboard and mouse players. For a long time, controller players could only use the default configurations, and when I first started playing Fortnite back in 2017, the default options were just terrible. But then came Combat Pro, which was an improvement, and then later came Builder Pro, which was an improvement again. You see, with Builder Pro, you have each building piece on your back buttons, and this allows you to build fast when using a controller. But then came the ability for controller players to set up their own custom set of binds, like keyboard and mouse players. This was an absolute game changer. Look, using custom binds lets you configure every button for combat, building, and editing, so you can tailor things exactly to your needs. And if you want to take your controller gameplay to the next level, I recommend you set up your own custom binds. Of course, custom binds can be confusing because you have so many actions and buttons you need to configure. So here I'm about to show you 3 custom controller binds that are excellent for standard controller users. The first set of controller binds will be the best option for most standard controller players that play using a non-claw grip. And controller binds 2 are a slight variant on the first set, and it's another good choice for non-claw players. And the third and final set of controller binds are slightly different to the other binds, and they're a really good choice if you do use the claw grip. I recommend you use these controller binds as a template, and I encourage you to make further tweaks to optimize them to your needs. So here's controller binds 1 for combat, here's controller binds 1 for building, and here's controller binds 1 for editing. Here's controller binds 2 for combat, here's controller binds 2 for building, and here's controller binds 2 for editing. And here's controller binds 3 for combat, controller binds 3 for building, and controller binds 3 for editing. And once you've chosen one of those 3 templates to use, you now have your controller's sensitivity, your settings, and your binds configured like a pro player. Obviously, using the same settings as a pro isn't going to instantly turn you into a pro, but it's a step in the right direction, and is certainly better than using bad settings or the mediocre default settings. Of course, there's no thing as the single best setting or sensitivity or binds because we're all different, and there's no single configuration or value that's going to suit everyone. But I hope that you've learned something new from this video and it's helped you to optimize your controller settings and given you the tools that you need to take your gameplay to the next level. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like on the video, comment down below, let me know the settings, sensitivity and binds you're using, and subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications because it really helps me grow. Anyway, that's the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching and have an amazing day. Peace.